My name is Zero. I'm one of the members of the Large Area Search Committee. The committee is made up of KCFR, Coeur d'Alene, and Northern Lakes members. And the purpose of the committee is so that if we respond mutual aid with each other, we can all be on the same page when conducting large area search. Large area search is going to differ from residential search mainly in that this is going to be a rope assisted search. This is a 220 foot rope, but when we tie the rings and the knots into it, there's about 200 feet of usable length. We're going to have a carabiner on the anchoring end so that we can tie in to our entry point. Usually this is going to have a unit identifier like is on the bag, but we don't have them made yet. That way anyone that comes to the tie-off point, the anchor point, knows who's on that rope. After that, it's going to be followed by a series of rings and knots every 25 feet. So if we go in 25 feet on the rope, we'll come to one ring and one knot as such. The ring is always going to be tied on the anchor side. That way you're able to orient your way out. The saying goes, ring, return. After that, every 25 feet, you're going to have another knot. So if we come upon this, we know hit the ring side. That way leads to the anchor point. Come over here, we see we have one knot. We're 25 feet deep on the rope. We keep going into the next set of rings and knots. We're going to have one ring and two knots, like such. Ring to the return side, two knots, so we're 50 feet in on the rope, and so on and so forth, all the way until we get to the end of the rope. If we take all this rope out here, you'll see that we have another clip on the end. That's so we can anchor the rope when we come to the end of our search. And we'll also see that it's tied to the bag. It's tied to the bag because the bag has your unit identifier on it, and any crews that are in the structure, when they come upon this bag, they'll be able to find this and know what crews are operating off of it. We got the crew set up here. What I like to have on scene for the tools is two hooks and a set of irons. The irons are so you can get in, get out. There's a lot of doors in the commercial structures. The hooks, obviously you're pulling ceiling when you first get in. Two ticks. I like to do a tick search when we get there. So each team is going to have a tick. So the crew, the first thing they need to do is they need to find an anchor point. That's something that's not going to move, and also something that's not going to impede traffic, like say a door handle. If you tied it to a door, then that takes that door out of place, so we don't want to do something like that. Some good options are the hinges of doors, if that's available. This is a solid pole right here. You could do that. There's a pole outside. That would be an acceptable anchor point. He's going to anchor it to where it's between knee and hip height. That keeps it in that spot where it can either be found, whether you're on the ground crawling or standing, you're still going to run into a rope. If you have the anchor point on the ground and your rope is on the ground, it's easy to lose that in the debris of a fire. And if it's too high and the heat pushes you down, then you're not going to be able to find that rope if it's too high. So once they've done their anchor point, they're going to get in their stack. The officer is always going to be first, and he's got the rope bag, the tick, and his hook, followed by his fireman, and then the engineer and the other firefighter. Those two spots can swap back and forth depending on the needs of the crew.
So we got no drop ceiling, nothing above us. We got a hallway straight ahead.
Usually the two senior men, because they have the most experience, is going to be the engineer and the officer. So they're going to be the ones in control of the tick going in there, and they're going to be the tick men, I guess is what you say. They're going to be the anchors, is what we call them. And then the tailboards, the two junior guys, they're going to be the ones without the ticks, and they're going to be searching. So that can change later on because we need to conserve air and balance that out. So if we always have the tailboard searching, then they're going to run out of air long before the engineer and the officer. But to get where we need to go, the officer and the engineer is going to have that tick. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get as close to the fire as you can, then you're going to search back. That way you search those high priority areas first and work your way back to safety. So once they move out, you'll see those two hooks down. As you can see that the officer has his hook bevel side down, and he's dragging that in front of him just so he can see if there's any drop-offs. That hook is going to let him know if there's stairs or drop-offs before he gets there and drops in there. What's going on right now is they have a hallway. The 2 tick men are up front. They're spreading out. That way they can cover this whole hallway in one pass, and they know it's covered. As you can see, his tailboard is keeping tension on that rope. That way it doesn't get lost on the ground. As they're going, they're keeping track of those rings and knots. If the officer feels, he can call out those distances as he passes them, or the tailboard, so that everyone on the crew knows how far in the structure they are. So right now they're at the intersection where a couple of hallways intersect. They're deciding which way they want to go.
Pause, we have another hallway.
You want your tailboard to see on the tick screen pretty much every inch of real estate that you're going to cover. So if you go to a corner and they haven't seen around that corner, show them that corner. So right now they had to change their direction. Being that this is the layout, they don't have to anchor this off anywhere because the corner is managing that rope for them. So there's a couple different ways for changing directions. So if I want to wrap this hinge, I'm just punching it to my tailboard on the other side. I'll take all that. Come back through here, keeping that tension on that rope. And that's one way to keep your change of direction. Another option is just knocking a hole in the wall and just wrapping that rope right around the metal or the wood stud that you have there and tying it off. So now the team has reached the end of their rope. So they're going to the captain is going to unclip his bag. He's going to find a place to anchor that to with the bag on the end, so the identifier is easily found to any other team that comes down that rope, and they're going to start their tick search going back along the rope to the point of entrance.
So we're at the end of the rope. We're going to take the right-hand side. You guys take the left-hand side. We're going to start working back towards the entrance.
So now that they tied off, they have dropped that bag. They're going to start their search pattern back. They're going to divide into their 2 teams. They got the officer and a tailboard, the engineer and the tailboard. Each team has a hook. Each team has a tick, and each team has one side of the irons. They'll divide that rope. They'll do the left side of the rope. One team will have the left side. The other team will have the right side. That way, we're not searching the same area twice, and we can divide and conquer that way. The engineer and the officer stay on the rope. They're in visual contact with their firefighters on the left and right side. So they'll show their firefighters, just like when we're doing change of direction, they'll show the room that they're about to search. They'll talk about, I'm going to do a left-hand search or a right-hand search or whatever. The firefighter will go off, do his search, and come back. The same thing is happening on the other side of the rope. The officer is going to show them the tick. They're going to talk about how they're going to search it, and he's going to go off. The ticks should be kept on the firefighters at all time, unless it's very small rooms. But any of the bigger rooms, always maintain that visual contact with your firefighter so you know that if something happens. At the same time, you see what area they're searching, and if there's a point of interest that you see on your tick, you can holler out to them and say, hey, to the left 10 feet or farther in 10 feet, and kind of cover those points of interest.
It looks like we got a small room. You've searched a couple of rooms. How's your air supply? Getting lower. Okay, let's go ahead and switch on this one.
The firefighter has searched a couple rooms already. His air is getting low, so in order to even that out, the officer is going to switch. He's going to take his turn searching, let the firefighter use the tick. The reason we didn't do that on the way in is because we want the most experienced guys punching the route in. Now that they know the route out, it's a little bit safer to have that firefighter on the tick. So once you complete the search and you get out to the building, you'll either have come out and completed the search all along the length of that rope, or you'll be short on air or maybe not be able to do the whole search, and that's where those rings and knots come in. You can keep track of that. That way the next crew that goes in, they know where your search stopped and they need to start. If you finish that search, that rope is still going to stay in place. That's a marker for other crews to go in, and that also marks what areas have been searched. Sometimes on a large area search, there'll be 2 or 3 different crews doing the search at the same time, so they can know that this building, because this rope is here, is already done, and they'll have their own ropes in their different areas. To summarize what we've covered how the search rope is set up. We covered the anchor points, some basic points on how to anchor the rope, how to deploy the rope, and then a basic search pattern when you're inside the building. There's a lot that goes into wide area search or large area search. This video is just a basic overview, but we're going to conduct some hands-on training where we can go over some of the finer points and get into more detail on the ins and outs when conducting this search.